The other party, who is stubborn, treacherous, and hard to deal with, and is known to be after trickery, after haggling, after stabbing others in the back.
Oh, he's talking about us. And that's not all. Iran's supreme leader also accusing the White House of lying. He says sanctions need to be lifted as soon as any deal is signed, and inspectors will not be allowed on military sites. That is contrary, by the way, to what the Obama administration said when selling the plan. Well, now some here are saying all this is great news for our safety and economy, but why? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Mike Ozanian, Sabrina Schaefer, Bruce Japsen, and John Tamney. So, Steve, would it be a good thing if the Iranians killed the deal?
Oh, absolutely. At the very least, David, it would mean that you have time to get regime change. It buys time for that. Also removes the real impetus, the real pressure for immediate military action by the Arabs and the Israelis against Iran. Those neighbors are not going to let Iran get the bomb. So if you let sanctions have a chance to really work and bring regime change, that would be for the good. But if you have a deal, you're going to see a war.
And, Bruce, we have already seen signs. We've had the Saudis bring together a coalition of Turkey, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and others. They say if a deal is signed in June, they may take action on their own.
Well, I'm not sure that would necessarily happen. I guess I would say that, and I know you guys love government agencies, and so
He's being facetious, folks. Go ahead.
No, the Energy Information Administration, I'd not even heard of this, they said price could go down up to $15 a barrel if the nuclear deal happens. So clearly there would be an economic impact if the deal did happen. So I think that they'll pursue it because the administration essentially came out with that report.
Well,
from this
Sabrina,
agency.
I'll tell you something that would make oil prices go up is if in fact there is a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran based on the Saudis' ambivalence about this deal. The Iranians would choke off, the Iranians or the Saudis would choke off that Strait of Hormuz, and nothing would get through. We get a lot of oil, about 9 million barrels a day from Saudi Arabia.
No, absolutely. Any kind of unrest in the Middle East is concerning, and of course it puts into sharp relief the fact that we want to be able to have how important the energy industry here at home is, and that we want to have some kind of energy independence. But look, this deal does need to be scuttled. I think it's really important that we sort of emphasize what kind of regime we're working with, what kind of impact it would have on the Middle East and beyond, and the fact that it's going to spur more, more war in the Middle East, all of which, of course, is going to be bad for the economy.
And, Rich, when you look at all of the hot spots now in the Middle East that we didn't have a few years ago, and you think about the split, we don't want to splinter our allies at this point. We need our allies, whether it's Israel or Saudi Arabia, together. They're not in favor of this deal. In fact, Henry Kissinger, talking about the deal this week in the Wall Street Journal, wrote the projected nuclear agreement will reinforce, not resolve, the world's challenges in the region.
Kissinger is right. Steve Forbes put it perfectly in a 1-minute summation what really the risks are over there. Look, we still depend on Saudi Arabia for oil, even though we're gradually moving toward energy independence ourselves. We depend on Israel for a lot of critical telecommunications technology. These are our two friends. You know, we should side with our two friends, and it looks like, happily, that the Iranian intransigence is going to possibly blow up the deal.
And, Mike, the only thing in Saudi favor, by the way, if they do go to war, is that Iran is broke right now. They're broke because oil prices are down and because of the sanctions. The sanctions, one way or another, would be relieved if this thing is signed in June.
David, deal or no deal, Saudi Arabia and other countries there that are allies are going to take out Iran's capabilities of making nuclear bombs. They're not going to wait for the possibility of a regime change. And I think when that happens, I think oil may go up only slightly and temporarily because the world is awash in oil.
John, what do you think?
Well, I think all of this is irrelevant. They need our dollars far more than we're going to need their oil. So the oil is going to flow into the U.S. no matter what. And what I think the Ayatollah's comments speak to is the utter dysfunction in the Middle East. And it makes my point better than I can that it's not a region worth saving. Why would we want to get into deals with corrupt regimes?
Well, but Steve, the fact is that oil would be, if in fact the deal is signed, and if that propels the Saudis and their coalition of forces to go to war with Iran, that Strait of Hormuz is closed. That means we will see tremendous interference with the oil flows and a lot of other trade flows.
Sure, and whenever you have a war, David, you have unintended consequences. We should have learned that from history. But the real danger of Iran being able to get the bomb or getting close to get the bomb is that if Saudi Arabia does not attack, they're going to develop a bomb. They've already started. The Egyptians have already started. The Emirates have made it clear they'll do the same thing. Turkey's going to do it. You want 4 or 5 countries in the worst neighborhood in the world having nuclear weapons? That's just a Holocaust waiting to happen.
And, Bruce, it is the worst neighborhood in the world. And right now, above any other time, you don't want to splinter our alliances. You want to keep our alliances together, even if you have disagreements with them, and keep our enemies at bay.
Well, I think that you bring up a good point. I think that also this shows that what a dumb idea that letter from Tom Cotton and the GOP was, because it consolidates the power.
Every week we hear about that letter.
It consolidates power of the hardliners, and some people think that this Ayatollah speaking might have been a tactical political move, and that maybe he's just trying to get some cover for the hardline, and the deal might go forward.
Well, and of course, there's a lot of positioning going on, Sabrina. We know that's how the Iranians work. That's how all negotiations work. But if they get just a little bit of relief from this hard line that they're taking right now, that'll make the deal even worse.
Absolutely, and I think, I have to object with what Bruce is saying. This is so easy to make this into a sort of a partisan divide, but the fact is, you referenced the Kissinger and George Shultz letter or article in the Wall Street Journal. This is the first time in modern American history that we have seen 2 former secretaries of state come out in opposition to something like this. That is a sign that this is really something that is bad for America. It's a bad deal, and I think we should be cautious not to turn it into sort of a neocon versus, or a Republican versus Democrat kind of debate.
Yeah, you don't want to get in the weeds to it. By the way, I should thank you for referencing it was Henry Kissinger and George Shultz. Rich, one of the things that they talked about in that article was the fact this so-called snapback of the sanctions, if in fact the Iranians cheat, which is practically inevitable if they cheat, but the administration claims they can snap back the sanctions. Henry Kissinger says once you get rid of the sanctions, it's going to be almost impossible to get them back again, even if they do cheat.
Sure. Well, Henry Kissinger is summoning 50 years of negotiating experience, and that's why he's to be believed on this issue. But I just fear when you look at what the liberal press is saying about this deal, they're saying things like, well, now President Obama has the chance to earn the Nobel Prize that he won in 2009. And I think that makes it irresistible for President Obama to walk back from a bad deal.
Yeah, and Steve, even the president has questioned whether he deserved that Nobel Peace. If that's what's propelling him, his own self-interest and his views in the history book, we're in trouble.
Well, we're in trouble. Has this really ununderstandable or weird view of the world, David. He thinks Iran's going to become an ally of the United States. He doesn't mind Iran becoming the dominant power in the Middle East. He doesn't realize you're playing with nuclear holocaust there. And by the way, a Nobel Peace Prize, a U.S. Secretary of State got it in 1928 for a treaty that outlawed war 10 years before World War II. And if World War II hadn't started when it did, Neville Chamberlain would have gotten a Nobel Peace Prize.
John, one of the things that we kept hearing was that he wanted to do for Iran what Kissinger did with China, and there was a suggestion that Kissinger would support what he was doing. He doesn't support it at all. That view of history, the parallel between China and Iran just doesn't work.
I don't think so, and I think it calls for being cautious. For months we've heard that ISIS was the big threat. Well, my understanding now is that Iran is the biggest threat to ISIS, can vanquish ISIS, wants to do it. I think what this proves is we don't understand that part of the world, and it's so dangerous to commit troops to something we clearly don't get.
Well, we're not talking, Mike, about committing troops right now. We're talking about keeping our allies close, trusting our allies more than we do our enemies. And you heard what the Grand Ayatollah said. I mean, I would call him an enemy, wouldn't you?
Well, David, let's look at it this way. He says he wants the complete destruction of the United States and Israel. What more do you need to say?
Exactly. I think that sums it up. Coming up next, so what the corruption charges against a big-name Democrat have to do with reforming a government program that's wasting hundreds of billions of dollars that you have spent on taxes? Well, the connection is there. Taxpayers better pay attention to this one. That's coming next.